Mark.
Hi.
Hi, this is Stig from Metal Express in Oslo.
How you doing?
I'm doing just fine, thanks.
All right.
How are you down in Germany?
Pretty good.
Metal Blade claims that you have captured the feeling from Fire Down Under with your new album Inishmore. Have you gone back to your roots? Do you feel that yourself?
I think somewhat. I think what this record does, it kind of captures the whole. It kind of encompasses the whole, all the records that we've done in some way. I think that if you took somebody that's never heard the band before and try to give them an example of what it was about, I think this record would be a pretty good example of that.
It's actually 20 years since you started Riot, and you've had a lot of lineup changes. Has that been a problem for the band?
Well, it's definitely been a problem. We've been plagued with a lot of problems, actually. We never really had the right kind of guidance. We never really had the kind of people working with us that we should have in terms of business people. It was just simply a case of not having good agencies and people working with us that were capable of guiding our career. And that's partially the reason why there were so many personal changes. It wasn't always like conflict within the band. It was that any particular band member would become, unhappy with the situation, felt like we weren't getting any place, basically, and they would leave.
Riot could almost be your own solo project, but have you ever considered to change the name or something?
Well, actually, we did go through, when Tony Moore left back in 1990, we considered it, I considered it, but after thinking about it, I figured that it was crazy because there was a lot of Riot fans. And at that point, it really seemed like, that it was almost a solo thing in a way. But I decided to try to keep the Riot spirit going, so we just kept on with it.
I know that a couple of guys in your current lineup play in Spastic Inc.
Oh, yeah.
Have you got other projects besides Riot?
Yeah, actually, we, as you probably know, Tony Harnell did some vocals on this record.
Yeah, that was another question.
And I've been writing some stuff with him. We actually have talked about doing a one-record project, basically. In fact, I've jammed a bit with Bobby Rondinelli from Rainbow. We've been thinking about putting something together. Basically, it's just a matter of getting the time to do it because Tony's really busy he's got a solo deal in Japan and he's doing a record. And of course, Riot's my main priority and we just have this record coming out, so we intend to do a lot of touring. So maybe if we can get like a few weeks in the summer at some point, we might be able to try to do something, yeah.
Sounds very interesting. Well, in the booklet to the CD, there's written about the story of Inishmore. Is this a concept album or is that just about the title track?
It's not so much a concept album like the last one was, but it's basically the intro piece and the title track are very much influenced by the Celtic folk music style. And also I've always been into Irish rock players like Gary Moore and Thin Lizzy and those types of people. And I just kind of got inspired to write that kind of a thing, and I thought it would be interesting to kind of put like a story to it and kind of relate the whole artwork to the album around it, and pretty much that's what we did.
This is great melodic power metal, I guess we can call it. When I hear about the metal scene in the States at the moment, it seems like this is a record for the Japanese and the European audience. How do you feel about that?
It's pretty true, I guess. Actually, there's a lot of heavy metal, hard rock fans in the States. The problem is, it's the media there. It's just the way the business works in the States. It's so huge, and the media, and it's television. It's like video and television is your main thing, and radio as well. And a lot of the radio stations suck in the big cities, and it's really difficult to turn younger kids onto this because they're not exposed to it. At least in Europe here, you have the press, which is real involved in informing the fans, and the same thing is true in Asia in a large part. In the States, it's just that it's television, it's visual media, and they pretty much control, I think, the minds of the young people, what they like, what they want to wear, as far as clothes, everything. So you have to break through that barrier, and I think things are looking up a bit because of a lot of reunions. The Kiss thing was really successful. At least that's rock, and like they were out there and they did very well live. Ozzy's been doing well live with his live performances, and maybe it'll turn back a bit. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, I guess you will work hard to promote the album in Europe and also in Japan. How about the States? Will you do a tour after Europe and Japan, maybe?
Yes, we'd like to, because that's really the whole. You have to tour in the States with this because there's no other real source of promotion. You have a few magazines here and there, but and actually there are some decent rock stations, usually out in the Midwest. The big cities are pretty not cool, in terms of the radio, but if you go out to Texas or you go out west, you can find some pretty decent stations. But you have to tour, and because our last two records weren't released in the States, it was hard for us. But now that Metal Blade's releasing this one in the States, we definitely would like to do some live stuff there.
You have signed to Metal Blade on this album. Does that mean much for the band, or was it just important to get a record deal?
No, actually, it means a lot to us because I think they're the perfect label for what we do. To be quite honest, when we signed with CBS back in 1988 for Thundersteel, I was pretty much against going with them. Our old production company president wanted to go with the major label, and I wanted to go with independent because I figured that first of all, it was a terrible deal, and it wasn't. They didn't make any commitments, and of course they did absolutely nothing. It's the worst record deal we ever had, the CBS deal. And, I was right. And, of course, in those days, I didn't have much control over things, I had limited control because of the contracts we had signed when we were very young. And like I had mentioned before, we were plagued by this for years. I think Riot's whole career was pretty much held back because of the people we had working with us from time to time. That's why the last 2 years, we were in a major legal mess, battling to get out of those contracts, and thank God we finally did. Over the summer, we finally made a settlement, and we're free now. So this is the first record that I've actually had full control over.
The last couple of albums just had a very limited release. Is that frustrating when you work hard to make a good record and you know that people is not able to get it?
Well, the reason I definitely was very concerned about the new record because it was the first one that was not related to Green Street Recording Studios, which is owned by our old production company. So it was important that this one definitely lived up to everything else, to prove that it was always the band that had the credibility and not the producer or the production company or anything like that. And the reason why the last two records didn't come out in the States is just because of the incompetence of the people that were working with us. There's no reason why they shouldn't have come out in the States. I had told our production company head to go to Metal Blade, to go to Brian Slagle in the States and have it released, but he just, they were very, very incompetent in terms of handling the business. It was a very, very bad situation. So, but that's over with now, finally.
What are your further touring plans? Are you going on your own tour, or will you find a greater headliner to support?
Basically, we'll probably play with another band. We're pretty much considering that. That would be smart, I think, to do a tour with another band or two bands actually that do the same kind of stuff that we do. And definitely, we're going in Japan in January next month. And we're actually going to record the shows for a live record, and then we definitely plan to come to Europe. We're trying to put something together now for the spring, but absolutely, definitely coming to Europe.
So the next Riot album will maybe be a live album. Is that right?
Well, they're releasing it. Yeah, they're releasing it in Japan. The Japanese are releasing it, and I think our management is in negotiation now with the Metal Blade to have it released here in Europe. Definitely, and then of course, we want to do is get another studio record out, before the year's over with. 1998 actually. So we want to try to make up for lost time now.
Sure. Do you feel that this is a very steady lineup you got now?
I think it's steady because of the fact that we have all new people working with us. For instance, the reason why Bobby Jozambek left was right after we had canceled the tour here a few years ago. Actually, we didn't cancel it. The agency we're with really caused the whole thing to fall apart, and it almost broke the band up because it caused a lot of misinformation over here about Riot. There was things being said that we didn't want to come to Europe, and we wanted all kinds of money, which was completely, utterly untrue. It was our agency that was trying to get more money, and they just didn't want the tour to happen, is what it boiled down to. And after that is when I really started proceedings to get away from them. And Bobby left the band at that time because he was frustrated. He had come to New York, and we were in rehearsals for already a month at the time. And he was just tired of this confusion. So he's back again because of the fact that we are no longer involved with that production company, and we have new people working with us. And because of this situation, I feel confident that I will be able to keep this lineup together.
Okay. When it comes to songwriting, I guess you do most of the work, but is it important to have guys that you can work very well with, or is this something you just do on your own?
No, it's very important. I always collaborate. In fact, most of the songs were written by myself and Mike DeMeo, the vocalist. I like to collaborate because I feel that we come out with better material that way. Basically, it's mostly me and Mike. The other guys really don't write. The other guitar player writes, so he usually contributes a couple of songs a record, and that's pretty much how we do it. I usually write the music, and Mike will write the lyrics usually.
Sure. Do you have a favorite track of the album at the moment that you would like me to play on the radio?
Well, I kind of like, I think the Angel Eyes is probably real definitive in terms of Riot style and all of that. And I like Kings Are Falling a lot. I think those two are pretty good.
Okay, I'll play them both.
Thank you.